Good morning. So here we go. We're back again. Hopefully you've watched Little Leaven 101, and it told you about what Little Leaven Children's Home is really about, and it goes over what we were going to be teaching over the next about 6 months, preparing to go. Yeah. It talks about the training program basically. So this is Little Leaven 201. And hopefully you watched Little Leaven 102 already, and it gives you a breakdown of how we started. This is going to give you a breakdown of spiritual development and cognitive development. Those are two of the five pillars for the Little Leaven Children's Homes whole person development. So we're gonna share screen, and then we're gonna get into the presentation. So here we go. Boom. We should be sharing now. All right. Present. All right. Okay. Okay. So we're going to pull up the presentation. This is spiritual growth and development. All right. Okay. So what we're going to talk about is first we're going to talk a little bit about Little Leaven language. Just because a lot of people who are doing this, you'll see. Okay, so what is spirituality and why is it important? Okay, then we're going to get into the soul versus the spirit, because a lot of people, they get confused about the difference between the soul and the spirit because they're not the same thing. Okay, different types of spirits. We'll talk about different types of spirits. Then we're going to talk about what spiritual maturity should look like. What does it mean to be spiritually mature? We have to do that in order, like, if we're trying to teach about something, we got to have a goal. We're training, so we have to have a goal in mind. So this is like kind of like the end goal. The end goal would be spiritual maturity. What about the conscience? We talk about what the conscience is, because it's when spiritual growth and development, it comes up, conscience comes up too. Where does that fit in? Then we're going to really get into how Little Leaven breaks down spiritual growth and development and the different parts of spiritual growth and development. So, and then after that, we'll get into the stages of spiritual development. And then we'll go to questions, if there's any questions. And I'll talk about the recommendations we have for developing a child to be spiritually mature. Then we'll take a short break. And after that short break, we'll get into the cognitive development. All right, so Little Leaven is founded by Christians with Christian principles. Okay, so what that means is that Little Leaven, it's all the board of currently the board of directors are all Christian, but and because of that, you're going to have people coming with everyone has a perspective that they come from, and because the board of directors is Christian, we come from a Christian perspective. But and some of the things we're going to say sounds very Christian, Christ-like, I guess you would say. But that does not mean that that we're excluding anyone. Okay, and when we talk about different things, and I say this to a non-Christian audience. I also say this to because predominantly this audience probably not Christian, but there's going to be a lot who hopefully there'll be a lot who are non-Christian, and I hope that that it doesn't hope that no one is discouraged from participating because they don't believe in a God or that they prefer to call their God Allah or prefer to call their God Yahweh, okay, or whatever your taste is. So but so that so I just want to make sure that we kind of, when we say a lot of times we're going to say things like So because of that, we're Christians. We'll talk about how we're non-discriminatory. And that's exactly what we are, because all children are welcome. It doesn't matter what your faith is to be in a child home. We don't restrict that. Um, so although we were founded by Christian principles, we don't proselytize Christianity, aka convert, or get people saved. And with that, it's not really necessary to, in our opinion, to really get people saved. What's the goal is so that people never need to get saved. Well, obviously these children are getting saved because a lot of these children will be in, so the reason why I say we never need to get saved is because they're already saved once they're at the home, right? As long as they stay at the home, they're saved from the things that would hurt them. Okay, because a lot of these kids, they would end up in child trafficking rings if they weren't at the children's homes. So they're already, this is saving them, and then it's gonna grow them up with principles and values and that are going to save them in the future. Okay, because and what I mean is so first I'm talking about how we're going to get them out of a child trafficking situation, right? And then secondly, I'm talking about how we're going to keep them out of that harm by teaching them good values, teaching them to study, teaching them to go to school, teaching them how to take care of themselves, teaching them how to communicate, teaching them how to understand other people and relate to them emotionally and spiritually. By doing that, we're going to save them not just from the child trafficking, but when they grow up, hopefully they'll choose a good job that's right for them. Hopefully they'll choose to be law abiding as opposed to a criminal. The goal is for them to choose a wise a spouse that's right for them. So that's how that's the salvation part in this. We're taking them from child slavery, and then we're giving them good principles so that they surround themselves around good people when they mature. So so we don't call ourselves a Christian organization, even though we have a lot of Christian principles, because, like I said, we're all equal. I mean, because we don't call ourselves Christian organization because even though we have Christian principles, everyone is welcome. Is what I'm saying. Everyone is welcome. And if people say we're Christian, that's fine, because that's our goal, is to be like Christ. And because Jesus would have wanted us to do things like help these kids and save these kids. But everyone is welcome. And hope that makes sense. Anyways, let's go on. So, talking about spirituality. And why is it important? in order, so before I can before we can grow and mature and teach kids how to be spiritually mature, we have to clearly define it. We have to all be on the same page. So little Leaven's trying to get everybody, that all the little Leaven children's homes, all the people that work for Little Leaven, all the people that volunteer with Little Leaven, we want to all be on the same page of what how Little Leaven is defining spiritual maturity. So what is spirituality? Okay, so then what I wanted to do is kind of look at how we use the word spirit in our everyday language. Okay, a lot of times we hear the phrase school spirit. Okay, we hear the spirit of the season, like when Christmas time comes around, or 4th of July. We talk about that's in the spirit of the season. So when we say school spirit, I, and we say spirit of the season, what we're talking about is a group of people, right? Like a school. Like you think back to when you used to like to go to like maybe a high school pep rally or a high school football game, and they say, oh, these people have a lot of school spirit. Okay, so spirit is not individual. It's not personal. Okay, a lot of people they talk about, hey, we need to have personal relationships with this or that, but that's not really what spirit is. Spirit is not just with me. It's shared with others, and a spiritually mature person, they're not going to be someone focused just on self, because you see, school spirit is a group moving in a direction together. A group supporting their school together. Spirit of the season, Christmas time, which is a good example for Americans, right? Christmas time. At Christmas time, uh, we have the spirit of giving, where everyone is in a giving mood, right? So that's so spirit is never, you'll never see spirit. Okay, so then you have the word esprit de corps in there. I show you. I showed you that esprit de corps. Esprit de corps means like the unity of a group. Okay, so spirit is not individual. You can't be spiritually mature and isolate yourself. You can't go into the mountains and then pray all alone and expect to end up being spiritually mature. That's not spirituality. That's not spiritually mature. That's not spiritual growth. And that's where people get it mixed up. And they get the spirit and the soul mixed up. Okay. And here, so now if you go to the next three, you see soulful music, soul food. So what's the difference? Spirit and the soul, right? What's the difference? So the soul and the spirit, they're both invisible. Look to the left, you see soul, invisible to the senses. Look to the right, you see spirit, invisible to the senses. It's not something you can smell. It's not something you can hear. It's not something you can see. It's invisible. You feel it. Okay, you can feel it. All right. Um, when we talk about, let's go back a slide. We talk about soulful music. Okay, when sorry, I'm African American descent, so I think of from my perspective, just like I was talking about Christian thing from Christian perspective, Muslims thing from Muslim perspective. We all have different perspectives, but we're not all that different. Okay, but so I think of a African American gospel church choir, and when that woman gets up in choir and she's singing, and everyone can feel her pain, that's that soulful music. Okay, and yeah, she's expressing something that becomes a shared feeling, but that soul is from her. It's her. Okay, it's coming from her pain. So when you talk about soul food, you're talking about how the love is in the food, right? Or you say poor lost soul, right? When do we say poor lost soul? Usually when someone is alone and they're homeless and they're just depressed and they can't work, they can't interact in society, they're just a lost soul. Okay, so that's what we're talking about. It's, and the soul is individual, while spiritual is it involves a network of people, a network of souls. All right, everyone has. Okay, so we'll go back to the soul column, over to the left. The second bullet is everyone has a soul. Right, everyone has a soul. Okay, but if you go, we're gonna contrast that with spirit. To the right, look at the second bullet of spirit. Everyone can be spiritual, but not everyone is. And like I said, we come from a Christian perspective, so the Bible talks about people are spiritually dead. When you're spiritually dead, that means that you're not connected. You're not connected to what we call the Holy Spirit. That's what we give the word, as Christians give the word, the Holy Spirit. You're not connected. You're spiritually dead. So then you're not feeling what's going on around you. You're not empathizing with what's going on around you. When you're spiritually awakened, when you have the Holy Spirit, you're able to empathize with people. You're able to be there. When they're sad, you're sad. When they're happy, you're happy. That's what the Holy Spirit allows you to do. And it's just like going back to the school spirit in the first bullet. Okay, that school spirit, you guys are all together, one, feeling the emotion, feeling the drive, feeling the journey of the football team going to win the championship, and they have to produce that school spirit, that team spirit, spirit of the season. Everyone giving, everyone buying gifts, giving gifts, receiving gifts. That's it's that shared experience. Okay, so everyone has a soul. You live, you've got a soul, but not everyone is spiritually alive. Not everyone has spirituality. Okay, that's touching other souls. That's a connection. Uh, bullet 3 on the left. The soul is who we are behind the physical. Okay, like I said, you can't touch the soul, right? Well, we can't. I don't want to say touch. I want to say you can't smell, sense, physically touch the soul, right? It doesn't work with the senses. But everyone has a soul, and the soul is who we are, like the essence of who we are. When you die, your soul is going to go someplace. Your body will die, but your soul is eternal, and it's who you really are. The spirit also is not physical, just like the soul is not physical. When you look at the third bullet on the right, so now the fourth bullet on the left, the soul is immortal. We just said that. But contrast, and we've been talking about this already, one can be spiritually alive or spiritually dead. Okay, and I try to explain how spiritually dead is when you're not connected, and the soul is individual. Look at the bottom left bullet. The soul is individual. It's individual. You can be a lost soul. You can be a damaged soul, disconnected soul, poor soul. But there's only richness in the spirit, because the spirit connects. The spirit, grows. The spirit, with the power with the power of connection. That's how we have life. When a man and a woman, when they join in marriage, and then they start a family, those are those souls connecting. It's spiritual. It's a spiritual thing when those two souls connect and create life. Right? Spirit involves connectedness, while the soul is individual. It's by itself. Two souls together, though, can have spirit. This is kind of like trying to. This is the truth about spirituality right here. Okay, so anyways, Holy Spirit. There's different types of spirits. Different types of spirits. Okay, you've got the Holy Spirit. Okay, and the Holy Spirit from a little leaven perspective, this is little leaven doing its best. A lot of people over the history of man has been trying to describe, understand, and explain spirituality, and this is little leaven's up at bat. This is where our this is us trying to hit the home run. Hopefully we hit a home run, and it all makes sense. So we're up at bat. So Holy Spirit, the Holy Spirit consists of a lot of basically the little leaven values. If you were to look at the little leaven values, you would get a good summary of what the Holy Spirit, the fruit that the Holy Spirit produces. Okay, some examples of those are love and peace and joy. Okay, remember I was saying before about the creation of life. See, that was meant to be created in a situation where there is love and there's joy. Um, evil spirits, um, those are spirits of fear, of rivalry and rage and loneliness. Okay, and people can connect with love and make things better with love. Like our connection, like a connection between a husband and wife is love. It's a holy connection. Okay, so marriage is a holy connection. It's a holy union. Right. Meanwhile, you have your evil spirits like fear. Okay, so groups like the Ku Klux Klan, uh, they come from fear. Okay, what it is that when people get afraid, um, uh, see, because once again we come from a Christian perspective. The Bible talks about how that God does not give you a spirit of fear. Okay, so fear is not of the Holy Spirit. It's a evil spirit. All right, and that fear causes bad things to happen. Back to I mentioned the Ku Klux Klan. So what the Ku Klux Klan is really about, and usually what racism, because racism is an evil spirit. It comes from evil spirits. Um, where racism really comes from is fear. People are afraid of maybe not being able to get the job they want, or they're afraid that this guy looks stronger than me and he's going to be able to beat me in a race, or he's going to make more money than me, or he's gonna get the girl that I wanted to have, or the guy that I wanted to have. Okay, and so it produces a fear. So you're afraid afraid you may not work, and afraid you may not have a job, and so you feel lonely, and it gets back down to the school mentality, to the playground mentality, where a kid's got to get picked on, right? I don't want it to be me. I don't want to be the kid to get picked on. Responsibility for things, and so instead of so to avoid getting picked on and to avoid having to take responsibility, I'm going to point the finger at someone else, and I'm going to gather people who have commonality with me, so that I won't be alone, and I won't be the one who gets picked on or blamed, and I won't be left out. So that's what happens, and that's where so what ends up happening is, with like a group like the Ku Klux Klan, will say, okay, well, I've got a commonality with this guy. It's easy to see. It's physical. His skin color is the same as mine. So I'm going to get with this guy with the same skin color, and we're all going to go against this other guy with that skin color, because that way I'm not alone, and I'm not going to be the kid that gets picked on in the playground. And so it's really produced. So racism, is produced by the evil spirit of fear. Okay, that's what it comes down to, and a lot, and that fear is because of lack of um of peace, lack of kindness, uh, some important values. An important value in little leaven is faith. That person lacks faith that good will overcome, and that there's going to be enough food, and there's going to be enough shelter, and there's going to be enough. It's crazy how people get so worried and so fearful about, oh, I need to find a husband or wife. Wow, well, it's not coincidence that 50% of the planet is female and 50% of the planet is male. There's plenty of spouses to go around. And you know what? Beauty fades. And you may think you may have the most beautiful man today, but eventually he's going to gain a pound or two, and he's going to get a pimple or two, or he's going to lose a hair or two, and he's not always going to be the most beautiful in the world. So but that's what happens when you're looking at the physical, and you're not spiritually mature. You don't understand spiritual things. And so the people make decisions based on fear. They incite rivalry. They get angry and start a rage, and they are lonely and all this other stuff. Then a division comes, and all the other deadly sins, right? We talked a lot about evil spirits, but and then the Holy Spirit, we kind of wrap it all up into one. If if you got the Holy Spirit, then you're on the right track, and all this other stuff comes into play. If you love people around you, you're going to come up into that's why it's a Holy Spirit, because it all kind of, because you can be a fearful person and you may not be angry, but you could be a fearful person. Okay, you can be lonely, but you may not be afraid. Okay, but when it comes to the Holy Spirit, love, peace, joy, goodness, kindness, it's all going to come. All this stuff will come. If you have love, eventually you're going to master self-control. As long as you keep away from the fear, you keep away from the division. Okay. And you've heard before, there's a spirit of division. There's a spirit of loneliness here. And we use it in our language all the time. We just don't really kind of always realize the language we're using is the right words for what we're talking about. So spiritual maturity results in a sense that there is connection between all things. Okay, this is what spiritual maturity. So I say spiritual maturity results in, because I'm telling you what happens when someone's spiritually mature, and so that way you know what the goal is, right? Because the goal is spiritual maturity. So spiritual maturity results in a sense that there is connection between all things. Okay. So what I mean with that is that when you are spiritually mature, you see someone and they may look different, they may talk different, they may speak a different language, they may be fat or they may be slender, but you as a spiritually mature person will recognize the commonality, or not so much the commonality, but the connection between the two. Okay, and so I tell this all the time at work. Okay, here's a good example. I met this guy about maybe 15 years ago, and he was cool. We got along, but we didn't hang out very much. Okay, and then so 15 years later, we're in the park at a barbecue. I don't see him very much, but his daughter was about 2 years old, was hurt herself and was crying, and my son, who's about 2 years old too, went over there, and helped, and smiled at her, whole thing, but then they ended up walking back holding hands, and she wasn't crying no more. Who would have thought that 15 years later, after meeting some guy wherever I met him, at a concert maybe, and who would have known that our kids would be holding hands 15 years later? You don't know that, but when you're spiritually mature, you understand that there's a connection. That yeah, this guy's a stranger, but you meet some guy on the street and you say, yeah, this guy's a stranger. But then you realize that, hey, dude, this guy's cousin might be my friend's wife or whatever. There's a connection. Okay. And the things that you do, there used to be a commercial where one guy helped one person, another person helped another person, another person helped the other person. Right. And it caused, it caused things to happen. Well, there's a connection between people. Right. Spiritually mature person will have a desire to be connected. Okay. a spiritual person will recognize that there's value in connection between people. Okay, an example is so the world, the earth, with all its civilizations, is similar to like a human body. I don't know. There's this movie called Men in Black, right? And that's the best way to describe it. And in this movie, there was this necklace, and the necklace had like a whole solar system in it, or something like that, or a whole galaxy in it. And what it was trying to say is that there's galaxy on top of galaxy. So you have a human body, right? And in your human body, you have all these cells. You have brain cells and lung cells and heart cells and red vessels and white blood vessels, right? You have all these things that are interacting in your body, getting things done, taking oxygen here, cleaning out your system here, and all these things are alive. And every single one of your skin cells, they're alive, and then they die, and they all serve a purpose. Well, it's like that, for us. That's just, your body is a society, and it works together for the good of the body. Well, our every community is a society as well, or it's a community. And then you have cities. Everyone has a job. This guy is a plumber. This guy's an electrician. This guy, is a carpenter, and they all work together to build the thing. Okay, and we are all connected, and because the guy who you meet on the side of the street, he's the guy that may be the guy who makes sure you get internet. Okay, and this guy over here that you meet on the street is the guy that makes sure that your milk shows up to your house. Okay, and we're all connected, and if we don't do our job, it affects the whole society, and that's what someone who's spiritually mature recognizes. And so then they recognize the connection between everyone, and then they desire to be a part of that connection, to be, a spiritually mature person wants to do well to help the rest of society, right? Because we all help each other. And if everyone has that attitude, man, society would be a lot better. Mature. That's why we want to get everyone to be spiritually mature. So recognition that everything, your third bullet, a recognition that everything is unique. Okay. Everybody is different. They may look similar, but they're different. They all have different skills and abilities. Okay. Everyone has their own set of fingerprints. Okay. Everyone is different, although we are similar. And everyone has a strength and a weakness and something to offer. Okay. And value. Everyone is valuable. That's what a spiritually mature person is going to conclude. Spiritually mature person is going to acknowledge that everyone has strengths and weaknesses. Those weaknesses can be, and those strengths and those weaknesses can both be used to for the good. And a lot of times weaknesses can turn into strengths. For example, if someone is impatient, they seem to be impatient, they're always, not patient. Well, that same person, that same thing that seems like a weakness is also a strength, because that thing makes him probably may make him a harder worker, or her a harder worker, because she's always got to be doing stuff. So it's a strength, and a spiritually mature person is going to see a weakness, and it's going to see the strength in that weakness. Okay, well, she is short. Well, that means that she can fit into a small space. Okay, or she may be able to reach under the table. Okay, well, that person is is blind. Well, guess what? That person probably hears really well. Right? Okay. A realization that it is not good to be alone. All right. Yeah. Yeah. That's common sense. We've been talking about that. It's not good to be alone. Okay. So let me. So the like we talked about the body before, and society and stuff like that. So if we look at our human body, we'll look at our own body. The hand the hands and the eyes together, I can do all my typing on my computer. Use my hands and my eyes, my brain. I don't need my legs, right? But it's not good not to have legs. And remember I said each of us is a society. Each of us is a part of the human body, making it work. We're part of this earthly body. When I say the earthly body, I mean the world, like the globe. We're all a part of the globe, making things work. So if we go to the second side, first bullet on the right side, it says concluding that infinite creatures cannot answer finite questions. So when you get into this realization that you're a part of a society, you're going to end up understanding that you don't have all the answers, but it's the combination of the society. It comes together to fix the answers. But then on top of that, always more questions. And there's always going to be more and more questions. And you can't answer all the questions. You can't know everything. One person cannot know everything. They've done studies how vast the universe is and how many stars there are and how many planets there are. It's just a vast amount, right? We can't ever comprehend it. And so a spiritually mature person is humble and knows that can't answer it all, can't solve it all. And some things just are not going to make sense. Things are not always going to make sense. And that's what a finite creature is going to realize, and a spiritually mature person is going to realize. You do the math. Spiritually mature person believes in justice. Okay, they believe in justice, and that's how a spiritually mature person finds peace, because they know that justice will come, even if it's not seen. Everything comes together on this planet, and things work. And no scientist can explain how everything comes together to work. It just does. And the more we study, the more we find out we don't know. I listen to the radio all the time. If you listen to any kind of, they just give out the Nobel prizes, and all those scientists who all got those prizes, they're all saying, we're just learning so much more. We're learning how much more we don't know. Yeah. We're never going to know it all. But yet, even though we don't know it all, and even though we know very little, actually, everything is still working. Can you see that? Can you see that everything works? Like your body works, even though we can't explain how everything in our body does work. It works. We don't use most of our brain, but we know that our brain works. There's so much we don't understand, but it works. And so when you see that and you look around, you have to come to the conclusion that things are going to work out, that things are going to be okay. It's going to be okay. You have to come to that conclusion by looking around, at all the things that are okay. It's okay. Everything's okay. A disease may come up, but then we end up finding the cure for it. And then even if we don't find the cure for it, we're still moving on. Society's moving on. Society still continues. And we talked about before how if a spiritually mature person understands that the soul is immortal, then what is there really to worry about, right? And you see justice and you know that it's there. At the same time, last bullet, spiritually mature person understands that if we don't seek justice, if each individual person doesn't seek justice, if each individual person doesn't seek to do what's right, then it erodes the system. We all have an obligation to do what's right, to seek truth, because when we don't, it degrades it. And then it's like when you are going somewhere. Um, okay, or okay, here's the basketball team. So if everybody on the basketball team, your team, is trying to win, the chances are more likely that you will win the game. But if when one person on the basketball team or the football team or whatever decides that they don't want to play and they're just going to stand, they're not going to go for the ball, then it holds the whole team back. It pulls the whole team back. Okay, it's like a best example for me is like a horse and carriage, right? You got two horses and they're pulling a load. If one of those horses decides not to go, then you're going to go in circles. You know what I mean? You're going to go in circles because one horse is going to be pulling and he's going to make it the whole thing go in circles because that other horse doesn't want to go. So we all have to move in that direction. We all have to move forward. Otherwise, it messes up the rest of society. So you have to seek justice and you have to grab that connection and knowing that we're better together than apart. And we can't really create. You know, here's a cool thing about life. Can you create life with one person? You can't. You can't create life with one person. You need two people. You need a man and a woman. You need both male and female to create life. You can't do it alone. If you're alone, then the only thing that's going to happen is death. Okay, so the conscience. Where does the conscience fit in? Okay, so we talked about spiritual maturity. Talked about how the soul exists, and the spirit exists. So where does the conscience fit in? Because conscience, we talk about how we get the feeling about right and wrong through the conscience. And we talked about how spiritual people, they seek justice. So in order to seek justice, you have to know what's right and what's wrong, right? Okay, so that means there has to be a conscience, or we have to talk about the conscience at least, because we always talk about how the conscience kind of tells us what's right and what's wrong, right? We talk about justice. You got to talk about how you know what's right and what's wrong. And when you're talking about know what's right and what's wrong, it's in our society that we mention the conscience, that feeling about, hey, this doesn't seem right. This doesn't seem wrong. So look, Blue One, everyone has a conscience. Doesn't matter if you're spiritually dead, you still have a conscience. Okay. The conscience is an internal record. Well, let me hold on. The spiritually dead part, we're going to come back to that. We're going to come back to that. Spiritually dead and conscience. We're going to come back to that. Okay. But everyone has a conscience. The conscience is an internal record of moral and immoral acts. Okay. So the way your conscience develops is you see society. And you see society and you see what rules society has and you see what people are doing. And what happens is you internalize that. You see it and you internalize. You write it in the back of your brain. And it says, and a lot of people think the conscience is in your heart. The conscience is in your heart, it's in your brain, right? So, anyways, the conscience, you record it in your brain. You say, oh, look, I saw this. That's interesting. And then you just make a note, okay? And then as you see things, you see reactions. You see positive and negative reactions to the things you see. Growing up, just maturing as a child. Think of a child doesn't know anything, clean slate, and seeing things, and they're just writing it in their mind, and then they're seeing how the reactions to those things. So that's why a kid is going to do what his parents see, what he sees his parents do. He sees his husband, he sees his dad, kissing his mom on the cheek. Then he's going to kiss his sister on the cheek. That's what John does. He's, my son. My son, he sees me hug my wife, and so he hugs his sister. They do what they see. And if there's a good reaction to it, then they repeat it. And unfortunately, though, even if there's a bad reaction to it, they repeat it. Because if a kid sees that their dad hit a girl, hit the mom, then that kid is going to hit somebody. Because they've seen it. And they copy it. If my son, he walks the way I walk. He repeats the things that I say. Okay. So the conscience, the third bullet, the conscience consolidates these acts on a personal scale. And that's why we had the picture of the lady with the scale. Okay. And then what the conscience will do is it puts things on the scale. and it'll put one good thing on the scale and a bad thing on the scale. And if you have more good things outweighing the bad things, then you kind of have a clear conscience. Okay? But take a step back. Every scale, just like when you weigh yourself, you have to calibrate the weigh. So the scale can be calibrated, and what calibrates the scale is society. Society calibrates your scale. So as you see good and bad, your scale is calibrated and it says, okay, well, you can get away with doing this. It's okay to speed. It's okay not to stop at the stop sign. And then even though society says it's wrong, your scale gets calibrated because you see your dad always not stopping at the stop sign, and you see your mom is always going 50 in the 45. So your scale gets calibrated. Oh, it's okay to go 50 in the 45. Okay, so that calibrates your scale. And then as you do bad and good things, you might be doing a bunch of bad things, but because your scale has been calibrated so much, you got a clear conscience. You don't feel bad about it. Okay, so does that make sense? Okay, so you have, we'll go over it again. You got a scale, good and bad things. You put good things here, bad things here. If your good outweighs the bad, then you're feeling good. The bad outweighs the good, you're feeling bad. All right, but that scale though gets calibrated by your society. Okay, so to the point where sometimes bad things aren't so bad, and so you have a clear conscience because you compare yourself to society. Okay, and the conscience makes you, and then when you do something, you look at the scale and you say, oh, wait a minute, this is going to tip my scale to the bad side. I don't want to do that. And that's why that's what the conscience tells you, because you don't want to have a bad conscience. Now, when someone has no conscience, they're spiritually dead. Okay, because in order to have your scale calibrated, you have to be spiritually connected to the people around you. You have to have connection to the other souls around you. But if you get so bad that you're not connected, then you have no conscience. And you do whatever you want to do, and you're not ashamed. And that's evil. Doing whatever you want to do, not being ashamed. Seeking your own self-gratification. That's evil. That's where you don't want to be. Consciences are only, so let's read the last two bullets. An individual is self-evaluated by how the scales fall, resulting in feelings of guilt or innocence. And the consciences are only as good as their calibration. Okay? If you have a Holy Spirit, then your conscience will be well calibrated. So this is how little leaven. So now we kind of. So now it's one thing for us to talk about what spiritual maturity is and what spirituality is. It's a whole other thing to try to teach it, right? To try to measure it and try to say, okay, how are we going to raise these kids up? Now that we've defined spirituality, what do we do with that? We got to make it, practical, right? We have to make it practical. We have to make it applicable to practical and applicable to what we're trying to do. All right. So little leaven, the way little leaven approaches this is we divide it into 3 observable dimensions: spiritual awareness of the body, spiritual awareness of justice, and awareness of good and evil. So let's talk about what awareness. We're going to do one at a time. Let's talk about awareness of the body. Okay, we've been kind of hinting at this the whole time we've been doing this, just talking about the body, right? So everybody and every creature has commonality. We've talked about this before. Everyone is uniquely gifted. And a well-functioning society works like a healthy human body. That's our metaphor. So let's take the human body. And you got the picture. You got a picture of the lung system, the respiratory system. You got the digestive system. You got, the reproductive system, the nervous system, the skeletal system, the muscular system. Okay, so the way I want you to do this is, let's take every system and we'll say that system is a city. Okay, so there's the respiratory city. There's the circulatory city. And all these cities come together to make a state. And the state is and then is one human body, right? So in each city, you've got, this city is known for its air production because it's the respiratory city. So they produce air, okay? Maybe in a more realistic application, maybe that means that this city is the producers of microprocessors. Okay, in this other city, they produce screens. And this other city, they produce cameras. And these cities come together to work for Apple to produce the iPhone, right? Okay, so, and in each part of the respiratory city, they've got people working. They got jobs to do. Okay, so someone who's spiritually aware understands that has a place. They may not be the fastest runner, they may not be the smartest, but they have a place in the society. And society needs everybody to work together to get it all done. So we have the respiratory city and the circulatory city and the nervous system city coming together to make a state, a human body. And then all those United States come together to make a family, right? Because sorry about that. Don't buy HP. Anyways. So yeah, society works better when each person shares and recognizes their gifts. So that's what spiritual awareness of the body means. When we say spiritual awareness of the body, we're saying that person understands how everything comes together. So, and in that, when we're working with the kids, you're gonna rate the kid based on how they're interacting with other kids and the importance they see in interacting with other kids. Spiritual awareness of justice. A spiritually mature person is always faithful. Okay. Got a picture of a banana. It looks like on the outside it's all black and bumpy and everything. But on the inside, you might have a beautiful white, sweet fruit. Okay. So why we show that? We show that because sometimes it seems like things aren't going right. Sometimes sometimes it seems like things aren't going right. And we just have to have faith that there's something more to that. Okay. So and it gives you peace when you recognize it and you believe that there's going to be justice, because you've got to have peace to be spiritually mature. Or spiritual maturity results in peace. And here's some examples. When I was with my aunt one day, we saw a homeless person walk into the restaurant we were in. And we said, hey, let's invite this guy to sit down and eat with us. So he sat down and he ate with us. But then, and we thought that we were going to cheer him up, cheer him up for his situation, maybe treat him to lunch and everything. But you know that he ended up telling us his story. And he talked about his faith in God, even though all these bad things had happened to him. And how God had just pulled him out of so many bad situations. And he ended up blessing us. And he was a happy homeless guy. And a lot of time we look at the homeless and say, oh, we feel so sorry for the homeless guy. He doesn't have this, he doesn't have that. Or we look at people in Africa and, oh, they don't have a lot of food. And, oh, they don't have. We look at people. I remember when I'm an Iraq veteran. So we went to Iraq and they were like, oh, they don't have any shoes. You know what? They may not have any shoes. They may not have as much clothes. They may not have a car, but they may be a lot happier than you are. Okay? Because there was a dictator named Chairman Mao. He was a dictator in China, famous guy. So he would appear to have been successful. He ran the country, and no one ever knocked him off his throne. He died on the throne. But if you read into his life, he was very paranoid. He was always scared. He was so scared that he had to have his own cow because he was afraid people would poison his milk. So he was living a life of unhappiness, even though it seemed like he was on the throne. And we see it all the time. We see these famous movie stars and rock stars, and they end up getting on drugs and killing themselves, right? Well, it's not always what it seems. That banana looks ugly on the outside, but it's actually a tasty fruit on the inside. Spiritual awareness of good and evil. So we got a picture here of this guy. Look at this guy. He must be a bad guy, right? I mean, he's got prison numbers or jail numbers up there. Looks like he looks like those are shots from an arrest shot, right? Mug shot. Those are mug shots. That's what we call them in the hood. We call them mug shots. So this guy must be a bad guy, right? Not necessarily. Turns out, if you guys don't know your history or recognize the picture, this is actually a picture of a man named Martin Luther King Jr. Martin Luther King Jr. was arrested several times, and he was seen as an enemy by many people. But he actually led a movement that allows to this day for opportunity for people that are not white Americans of European descent, to have jobs and to be able to vote and to be able to speak out. America is a very diverse country right now, but I tell you what, if it weren't for a guy like this guy who led all these things, you wouldn't, there wouldn't be all the Asians or Latinos that are in the good jobs that they're in right now. There probably wouldn't be hardly no Mexicans in America because it would be better to be in Mexico if it weren't for this guy right here, Martin Luther King Jr., fighting and being willing to get arrested. So sometimes the guy who's under arrest is not always the bad guy. Sometimes the guy in the police uniform is not always the good guy. Okay? So it's an awareness between good and evil. Just because society says, hey, this is what the good guy looks like, this is what the bad guy looks like, doesn't mean that that's true. And someone who's spiritually aware and spiritually mature, he can see, or she can see through the physical and see into the heart, and they make decisions not based off of the looks, but off of the content of the character and out of the fruits of the labor. And spiritually mature person, he knows or she knows what is good and what is evil. Okay? Little leaven defines good as actions that give life. Little leaven defines evil as actions that bring death. And actions that give life could be, they actually did a study where they tested, I think, salt, and people said, "I love you," the salt. I kept saying, "I love you," the salt, and the salt later on, after time, the salt was good looking. And then another group said, "I hate you," to the salt, and the salt turned dark. So, by speaking life, by saying good things, that's giving life. By saying bad things, by degrading someone and deriding someone, you're creating death. Okay, because then that, like, someone gets told that they're not smart, so then that makes them not try to do well in school, and so you're creating death, because then that person who later on doesn't do well in school doesn't get a job, can't provide for himself properly, and then ends up in jail or ends up dead on the street because we spoke death into them. So it can be something small, it can be something big. Obviously, evil action, taking, bringing death, shooting somebody, that's obviously killing someone, that's obviously bringing death. But you can bring death, you bring people towards death as well by saying negative things. And you bring people to life by saying positive things, by focusing on, remember we talked about how, hey, this person may seem impatient, but that actually can be a strength, because that means that they're just a hard worker and they like to get things done. And then instead of focusing on them, oh, he's impatient, let's focus on, oh, he's really a hard worker. Or focusing on, oh, he's so emotional, oh no, he's very passionate. Okay, that's speaking life and doing actions that are good and actions that create life. Okay. Example of also how things can seem not so bad, but a spiritually mature person is going to know right away that it's not right. Texting and driving and texting. Okay. Hey, there's some advantages to it. I can text, I can pass a message to get a message to somebody, at the same time I can drive. But a spiritually aware person, even though it's not against the law, because it hasn't always been against the law, it's against the law now. But when texting first came out, that there was no law that said you couldn't text and drive. But a spiritually mature person is going to say, well, wait a minute, I could get into a car accident, I could hurt somebody, I could take a life. I'm not going to do this. This is wrong. And it's not to the point where you're actually taking the gun out and pointing it at somebody, but it's wrong because you could cause damage to a life, put somebody in a wheelchair for the rest of their lives. Promiscuity. Hey, what's wrong with promiscuity? What's wrong with doing that? I mean, it makes everybody feel good, right? Well, a spiritually mature person is going to see beyond the instant gratification, but is going to look at the long-term effects. Is this action going to build up their self-esteem or tear down their self-esteem? Is this going to help my future relationships, help my future spouse to have faith in me, knowing that I have self-control, or is it going to hinder trust in the future? That's why promiscuity is wrong. Promiscuity is wrong. Okay, intimacy should be done within under the union of marriage, because that's the only time in which trust can be 100%. Okay. Other times you may think it feels good, but it's gonna be more damaging in the end. Okay. Later on, when your future spouse knows that you were, just as friendly as as can be, then they're not going to trust you. They're not going to know that. They're not going to think you have self-control. And then you have a bunch of kids without any parents to help raise them, right? Running around. So the stages of spiritual development. The first stage of spiritual development is self-awareness. Okay. Knowing and and basically way for me to describe that is just knowing that you have a desire to gratify yourself. Okay, that's very it's in the beginning of life, and that's when the baby wants to be fed, right? It feels hungry, and desire to possess. You know that people have that. You have to have a self-awareness in order to first be spiritually mature. You have to be aware of yourself, and that's going to come pretty easily. Second stage, connection. All right, that comes pretty fast. It comes in infancy. The child desires to be in a community with its mother, usually, or brothers or sisters. They do that by seeking to play, interact with others. Third stage is equality. Third stage is recognizing that everyone should be given the same opportunities as well as receive comparable rewards and punishments for good and bad decisions. An expectation of reward and punishment is the measure. So that means that they recognize that. So you're gonna, when someone has reached this stage of equality, they're understanding that people should be treated equally. Okay, that should come as a young age, and then they're going to expect reward and punishment. When someone does something wrong, they're going to have an expectation. Hey, something's bad should be happening right now. When someone does something right, and a lot of people are going to recognize this at a much earlier age. 4 years old, they already recognize this, but we need to try to have them recognizing this by 6, at least. Participation, stage 4. So what this is saying is that at this point you're understanding that, wait a minute, I'm not just a victim in this. It's not just about me doing something good and getting a reward, or doing something bad and getting punished. I can actually participate in this justice thing, and I can actually, if someone does something wrong, I can actually get in there and make sure that wrong is righted. They should know this by 10. You're going to see kids do these type of things earlier, but by 10 they should know, hey, wait a minute, I can get involved. Self-evaluation. So this is around the teenage years. This is when a kid is going to start thinking, hey, am I doing it right, or am I valuable? Okay, and I want to be a part. I want to feel like I belong and things like that. I want to feel valuable, right? That's what's going to happen at around 12, and they're going to start to take actions to gain a sense of value. To maybe they're going to want to be a part of a team, or they're going to want to have certain friends or something like that. Okay, so that's the teenage years when you start to want to belong in a group. You're worried about what your friends are doing. Okay. Stage 6, identification. This is when a kid is starting to say, wait a minute, I'm not just like everybody else. I have strengths and I have weaknesses, and I can improve on them. And that's when we really want our kids, our little Leaven kids at 14, we want them to be really thinking about, hey, well, so what am I going to do in life? Right? That's what we want them thinking about at age 14. This is little Leaven's development, right? This is where we want our kids to be at. Okay, at 14, we want them to be doing this type of thing. This is an important chart. This is an important chart. I hope that we can teach the people to use this chart so that they know where their kids need to be at. They know their kids need to be in these areas at these stages in their life. Stage 7, individualization. Recognizing that everyone is different, that everyone has different feelings, values, reactions, strengths, and weaknesses, knowing that expectations cannot be universal. Okay, that's when. Okay, it's one thing to so first we're just gonna go back. Stage one. Stage one. You're just kind of just taking care of yourself. You're trying to get what you need. You're aware of yourself. Stage two, you're aware of people around you, and you're starting to, hey, I want to have some connection. Then stage three, you're like, wait a minute. When you do something right, you get punished. You get a reward. When you do something wrong, you should get punished. And this is all spiritual development. And then participation, stage four. So now you're like, wait a minute. It's not just that there's rewards and punishment, but I can I can do this something to affect, to make sure that people get rewarded and punished. I'm gonna tattletale or whatnot, right? Self-evaluation. Now I'm looking at, am I valuable? What makes someone valuable? I want to be valuable. Then stage six, wait a minute, I am valuable. I have these strengths. I have these weaknesses. This is what I'm good at. This is maybe what I should be doing. Stage seven. Now, wait a minute. Oh, I'm not I'm different than everyone else. I just realized that I have these strengths and weaknesses. This guy ain't got the same strengths and weaknesses. He don't have the same potential I have. Or he has more, he has less, or certain more potential in this area, right? So we're all different. What do you know? We're all different. Stage eight, harmonization. Now I'm recognizing that everyone and everything has value, and that we work better together. 18 years old, I'm an adult now. Hey, I gotta understand that we work better together. We're gonna work together. Okay, and that's I'm gonna strive toward. We're gonna strive towards working together. And then finally, inner peace. Hopefully we can do this at 20. This is a really tough one because I don't even feel like I've got the inner peace really yet. Right? Or maybe sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. But that's knowing that the universe balances itself. That we have an obligation to seek justice and fairness. However, when circumstances are out of control, something will happen to make things right. Okay, it's just kind of like it's the whole saying where, like, give me the wisdom to know what I can affect, and give me give me the courage to affect what I can affect, and give me the wisdom to understand the things that I can affect. Right? That's where that all of us leading in. So those are the stages of development. All right, and so that's spiritual growth and development. That's it. That's little Leaven spiritual growth and development. Now, I know that we didn't really talk about how we're going to grow that, and the kids were just describing what it is. Okay, but then later on in the future classes, we're going to actually, I think it's little Leaven 301, when we actually show you what how we going to measure, how we're going to help the kids and disciple this and measure their success in these things. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to go to break. This took longer than I thought, so maybe we're just going to have little Leaven 201 just be spiritual growth and development. Maybe we'll see how we're going to work this out. Okay. Well, thank you very much for listening. Hope that we learned a lot, and God bless everybody. Bye. And stop and stop podcast. Bye bye.